All right, well, let's get another question here, Jim. This one sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Mark Powell in Bakersfield, California. Watching part 1 of the Vice Dark Side of the Ring episode on Brian Pillman, my question to you is, where do you rank the Hollywood Blondes among the all-time top tag teams, and what could they have accomplished had WCW not ended their run so quickly?
Well, let me say, first of all, that during the period of time that Austin and Pillman were teaming up as the Hollywood Blondes, I was in Knoxville running Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I was keeping an eye on WWF and I think I'd probably just started with WWF at that point in time, or somewhere around that same time period. But I would tape all the programs and at least zip through, see what was going on, and Pillman and Austin as the Hollywood Blondes is one of the only things on WCW television at that point that I would actually stop and watch. If Flair was doing something that, or whatever, a friend of mine, if Bobby had a showcase every so often, but Austin and Pillman, I'd watch them every time. Where do they rank on the list of all-time great tag teams? They don't, because they only left them together for 6 months. I mean, when you've got everybody from the Grahams and the Fargos to Bockwinkel and Stevens and blah, 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 I don't think that I would say to Steve Austin to his face, you didn't rank as one of the great tag teams because they didn't leave you alone long enough. If they'd have been together a few years, they might very well have. What they could have done, we don't know. The whole company was ailing, but they would have had better tag team matches than anybody that they replaced them with or anybody that came beforehand, because while they were together, they were having better tag team matches than anybody that came after or before. They clicked as personalities together, and they were putting work into it. You could tell where all the other guys were just going out there doing the same old shit. They were motivated. So I loved the team. The team's not an all-time great team because they weren't together that long and barely really did anything, but they could have if they'd left them together. But if they'd left them together, then that would have changed the course of wrestling history if Austin had stayed and not gone through that whole thing. So it probably worked out best in the end. It worked out best for both guys because, I mean, it was WCW. They were one, change in administration away from being fired or let go or released or buried or pushed or whatever at all times in that company. Whereas Pillman was able to get out of there and get the spot that, the big paying spot that he had wanted from Vince. But by that time, the wreck had happened, but Austin definitely prospered. So they probably shouldn't have stayed together in WCW. They would have both been not doomed, but definitely not as successful as they were for the next few years. And they wouldn't have been doing documentaries about Brian. Well, probably either.